Hello, everyone. This is Professor Joseph Holbrook once again uh, communicating with you from Miami, Florida. And this week we are in week 10 of our introduction to Christian history. We're dealing with the modern age and the age of revolution, the long 19th century in Europe. And this it's called the long 19th century because it's not measured by calendar dates as much as it is about events, trends, and dynamics. And so the long 19th century is seen as beginning around the time of the French Revolution, which of course is in 1791, and it doesn't really end until 1914 with the outbreak of the Great War. So that's a long period. That's a good bit more. That's almost 120 years. That's why it's called the long 19th century. And a lot of things happened in that period to bring about a significant amount of change. So we're using the textbook by Alistair McGrath of 2013. We're in chapter 4, pages 263 to 253. And here's our outline for discussion today. I'll probably do this in 2 videos. I doubt if I can get through the whole thing in 1 video. But we'll start talking about the Napoleonic Wars, the Congress of Vienna, the Orthodox resurgence, which leads to the Greek War of Independence, which I find interesting as a Latin Americanist because it happens nearly the same time as the South American Wars of Independence against the Spanish Empire. In this case, it's the Greeks against the Ottoman Empire. So there's something similar going on there, which is partly nationalism. We'll talk a little bit about atheism leading to revolution, Feuerbach and his thesis, and Karl Marx, and his reductionist definition of religion. And we'll probably end up talking about Darwin's Origin of the Species, which these 3 or 4 things, the Enlightenment, the rise of atheism and an indifference, revolution, the Marxism, Darwinianism, all lead to a Victorian crisis of faith, which is a shrinking of, or a lapse or shrinking of religious enthusiasm, religious participation, and belief in the latter part of the 19th century, ending with a clanging symbol of the Great War, which then leads directly into the Great Depression and the Second World War, which dealt nearly a death blow to any kind of naive faith in progress, and also brought into question faith in the civilizing power of Christianity. So we will cover that and probably leave the latter part of the outline for our next video this week. So let me jump into this and begin to talk about it. Oh, there's one more thing I want to show you. This is the handmaid of history. As Hegel called him, Napoleon Bonaparte. He really upset the apple cart. When he came on the scene in the Napoleonic Wars, he basically turned Europe upside down and inside out, including Spain and Portugal. He sent the Portuguese scurrying across the Atlantic to set up a monarchy in South America, the only one that's ever been there in history. He also sent the Spanish into a tizzy, and a revolution and guerrilla warfare was invented. And in the meantime, the Spanish republics were rebelling against Spain. So this guy really stirred things up. So let me continue here. So this is Napoleon Bonaparte, and in 1799 he became the charismatic general of the French Revolutionary Army, and he seized power in France. In 1804, in December, he crowned himself the emperor, breaking with the republicanism of the revolution and also with the tradition of allowing the Pope to crown the emperor. Only Great Britain seemed immune to Napoleon. Its navy prevented any attempted invasion, while at the same time keeping its imperial trade routes operational and preventing economic meltdown. And with the encouragement of the British, the Portuguese fled Europe. The Portuguese nobility, the throne, and their attendants, when Napoleon attempted to invade Portugal because it was the primary ally of Great Britain, it had to go through Spain, which then created problems for Spain, and the Portuguese simply got on ships and sailed for Brazil, which gave Brazil a very unique history. So this led to upheaval, as I've been discussing. By the time this was over, Spain and Portugal were both greatly weakened. They found it increasingly difficult to maintain their control over their South American colonies. Also, France was greatly weakened by the time the Napoleonic Wars were finished. But by the end of the war, Great Britain was firmly established as the dominant power in Europe and probably the dominant power in the world by this time. So after the trauma of the French Revolution, the Catholicism began to regain something of its earlier confidence, partly as a result of the rise of the Romanticism, which was a reaction to the Enlightenment and an emphasis on intuition and feeling and nature. So the rise of Romanticism as an intellectual movement had an effect on reawakening interest in Catholicism, particularly in Germany and France. And there were also things happening with the Prussian Lutherans in Prussia. The Napoleonic Wars had an effect in the Christian churches. There was a merger of the Lutheran and Reformed churches in Prussia after the Council of Vienna. They combined to form an evangelical German church. William III, who was the Kaiser of Germany, imposed increasing religious centralization on the Prussian churches. Many Lutherans came to believe that their concerns were being marginalized, and so they left in the 1830s and migrated to North America, both Canada and the United States, and that was basically the impulse for the formation of the Missouri Synod, or Synod, of the Lutheran Church. There's several Lutheran synods. I belong to a Christ the King Lutheran Church, which is a member of the ECLA, which is a little more liberal. The Missouri Synod is probably the most orthodoxically conservative of the Lutheran churches. And this brings us to the Greek resurgence, or the resurgence of orthodoxy. And here you see a Greek patriot with a cross on his flag going to war to bring independence to Greece against the dominant Ottoman Empire, which had controlled Greece for a number of years, several hundred years probably. And so the Greek War of Independence began around 1821. Lord Byron of Great Britain was influenced by Philo-Hellenism, and he promoted the cause of the Greek War of Independence, and many intellectuals saw it as a possible return to classical Greek values. But the insurgency stalled by 1827. Let me show another picture here. This is, I got too many mice here. This is a picture of Metropolitan Germanos of Patria raising the flag of the Greek Revolution during the War of Independence. So similar to the War of Independence in Mexico, which was launched by a Mexican Catholic priest. In this case, it was the Metropolitan, Orthodox Metropolitan, who helped launch the Greek War of Independence. This is an illustration of how religion and politics are intertwined. Economics, religion, politics, culture is all very intertwined. And in the case of some of the countries of South America, the Simon Bolivar, for example, and others began to see the Catholic Church as an enemy or an obstacle to their Republican goals, their liberal goals, because it was anti-democratic, it was anti-revolutionary, and the Catholic Church took a very reactionary and oppositional stance against the wars of independence and the attempt to develop constitutional Republican government. That was not true in Greece and Serbia and other areas of the Eastern Europe, where the Orthodox became a rallying cry and a source of patriotism for those that were seeking to regain control of their nations, such as Greece and Serbia. Orthodoxy was a source of national pride, similar to the Irish. Under the thumb of the British, Irish Catholicism became very important. The same with the Polish Catholicism under the rule of the Soviet Union. So this is some of the more subtle and nuanced aspects of religion and politics. And of course, there were religious tensions in the Balkans because the Balkans had a mixture of Orthodoxy. In Serbia, for example, there were Roman Catholics in the Balkans. There was also Sunni Muslims as a residue of the control of the Ottoman forces in the Balkans. And so you had three different religions, and eventually Protestantism began to encroach. And so the Balkans has had religious tension for centuries, which of course eventually will bring the long 19th century to an end with a cataclysm of violence. Moving on, we'll talk a little bit about rising atheism and an ideology revolution. One of the most revolutionary developments of the first half of the 19th century was the emergence of a critique of religion that undermined its credibility. In 19th century Germany, there was a school of thought that emerged which argued that religion was not a response to divine revelation, but was in essence a matter of psychology or sociology. I'll be honest, this is the tack that we take in a religious studies department, where we're not primarily a department of theology. We do not espouse religious commitments, although individual professors do have their specific religious commitments. But because we are in a public school, state-supported, we take a social science approach to trying to understand the phenomena of religion, while acknowledging that there are some things beyond our ability for analysis. That basically would be the discipline of phenomenology. Acknowledges that there may be reality or truth in the supernatural aspect of religion, but that social science is not competent to try to analyze it. So there's a little promo, I guess, for our religious studies department. So religion came to be seen as reactionary. The Protestant churches of Germany especially were seen as reactionary social forces preventing liberal or radical social change. Failure to neutralize their social and political power led to the development of an alternative strategy, the subversion of the ideas upon which they were based. Ludwig Feuerbach, who lived until 1872, wrote an influential Essence of Christianity in 1841, which declared that God was an invention, something that human beings created as a means of expressing or satisfying their deepest desires or cravings, said Feuerbach. And let's see if we can get a glimpse of him. There's Feuerbach. And he was influenced by Hegel's dialectics. And you may have heard the term left Hegelians and right Hegelians. The left Hegelians tended to be Marxists or left wing, and among those was Karl Marx, who was among the left Hegelians, who also used dialectics, but unlike Hegel and Feuerbach, it was not a dialectical idealism, but dialectical materialism. So from Feuerbach to Marx, Feuerbach's radical critique of religion was based loosely on Hegel's philosophy of religion. Feuerbach's approaches were attractive to many reforming intellectuals, partly as a means of undermining the authority of the churches. In the end, the political aspects of his ideas would be developed far more radically, in a radical manner, by the philosopher Karl Marx. And I believe we have a picture of Mr. Marx. There he is, his famous picture. And so Karl Marx came along and developed a materialist explanation for social change in society and culture. For him, religion was an epiphenomenon. An epiphenomenon means a secondary, not a primary factor or characteristic or element of society. So religion arose as a secondary effect on the account of sorrow and injustice, says Marx, which resulted from the political and economic alienation. For example, as a result of the division of labor, which alienated workers from their products. The roots of religion, according to Marx, lie in the forces and influences of the material world. So what did Marx say? A couple of quotes from Marx. The religious world is but the reflex of the real world, he said. Marx argues that religion is just the imaginary sun which seems to man to revolve around him until he realizes that he himself is the center of his own revolution. In other words, God is simply a projection of human concerns. Human beings look for a superhuman being in the fantasy reality of heaven and find nothing but their own reflection, also said Marx. And finally, his most famous quote, "Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, the opium of the people." And he basically felt that religion was a way of self-medicating in a hopeless situation. And of course, religion does bring hope to millions of people, but maybe not entirely in the way that he was thinking. So this brings us to this guy, Charles Darwin, who's going to give like the triple knockout here from Feuerbach, Marx, and now Darwin is going to have his say. So Darwin and Human Origins. In December of 1831, Darwin set out on a sailing ship called the Beagle, the HMS Beagle. It set out from the English port of Plymouth on a voyage of 5 years. The trip's naturalist was Charles Darwin, and during his voyage, especially in his trip around South America, he noticed some aspects of plant and animal life which seemed to him to require explanation, yet were not satisfactorily explained by the predominant theories of the day. And here is a picture of his journey, setting out from Plymouth, down along Brazil, then Argentina, and around to the Cape Horn and up the west coast of South America to the Galapagos Islands, and then across the Pacific to Australia and around the Cape of Good Hope, and the southern tip of Africa. And there was a quick trip back over to Brazil. You can notice how closely Western Africa is to the eastern tip of Brazil there, and then back to Plymouth. So that was the journey of the HMS Beagle, which led to the famous book Origin of the Species in 1859, and then again he wrote in 1871 The Descent of Man, which held that all species, including humanity, resulted from a long process of biological evolution. Of course, this has clear religious implications. It brings into question or challenges a literal interpretation of the first 11 chapters of Genesis. Darwin's theory suggested that human nature emerged gradually over a long period of time, and that no fundamental biological distinction could be drawn between human beings and animals in terms of their origins and development. Traditional Christian theology regarded humanity as the height of God's creation, distinguished from the remainder of the created order by being created in the image of God. On this traditional reading, humanity is to be located within the created order as a whole. It stands above it on account of its unique relationship to God, articulated in the notion of the Imago Dei. Yet Darwin's Origin of the Species employs an implicit and in the Descent of Man an explicit challenge to this view. Humanity had emerged over a vast period of time from within the natural order, according to Darwin. Darwin never said that he stopped believing in God. He made actually contradictory statements. And in the beginning, some religious leaders welcomed his work. Charles Kingsley, who was the canon of the Westminster Abbey, singled out Darwin's work as on orchids as the most valuable addition to natural theology. He insisted that the word creation implies a process as much as an event. Kingsley went on to argue that Darwin's theory clarified the mechanism of creation. In other words, making man from the dust of the earth took a little time, maybe 4 million years. This leads to the Victorian crisis of faith, in which late 19th century people began to have doubts about revealed religion based on the Enlightenment, on deism, on Feuerbach's criticism, on the criticism of Karl Marx. We haven't even got into Freud yet, which brings another potent criticism of Christian faith. And this is all before the Great War in 1914, which, as you can imagine, greatly exacerbated the loss of credibility and the loss of confidence of Christianity. And so we'll pick it up later this week on the Victorian crisis of faith, and we'll start from there. Thank you very much. Appreciate your participation with me. And please reach out to me and let me know if you have any questions at all. God bless. Take care.